Welcome to the March 2025 Cure JM Town Hall. Tonight we're looking at the road ahead, an important look at where we have been as an organization and where we are now headed in this pivotal season. Tonight we've got Jim Minow, who's our executive director. Jim is outside of Washington, D.C. these days. We'll then hop over to the Pacific Northwest with Shannon Malloy, who's director of development and community engagement for Cure JM. Then down to sunny Southern California, Zack Harrison, who's one of our board members and also started Cure JM's Ohio chapter and is now in Southern California. We'll talk about his experience working with this family of families. And also, finally, we'll hear from Nicole Ryba. Nicole is Cure JM's chapter and walk manager. She's in New Jersey tonight. So we're doing a little coast hopping back and forth this evening during our March 2025 Town Hall. Jim?
Thank you very much, James. I think I know many of you on this call. I know some of you are also new to Cure JM, so I'm going to cover just a teeny bit of history and background and cover our mission just to make sure that we're all on the page about exactly what this organization is and what it is that we do. We are about to celebrate our 23rd anniversary, and we should be very proud of that because many rare disease organizations or nonprofits in general just don't survive that long. And not only have we survived, but this organization has thrived and in fact has emerged because of all of you, because of our families by and large, as at least in my opinion, one of the most, if not the most important rare disease organization serving the pediatric rheumatology community, looking principally at JM, but a lot of our research has crossover implications to other rare autoimmune diseases that are treated by rheumatologists across the country. Our mission is really research oriented for the most part. We focus and always have focused on funding research to develop better treatments and a cure for juvenile myositis. We're getting ever closer to that once seemingly unattainable idea of actually having a cure. I'll talk about that in a few minutes, as well as providing support and guidance to families through our family support organization and through the development of, more recently, our clinical care network, which Shannon will be talking about a little bit later. In recent years, we have increasingly focused our research program on supporting and developing clinical trials. And what is a clinical trial exactly? So a clinical trial is something that the medical community does after approval by the FDA of a clinical trial plan. The medical community really comes together and develops a clinical trial plan to enroll patients to test new therapies, most often drug therapies, in actual patients. So oftentimes clinical trials will happen after drugs are tested in animal models or are tested basically in a laboratory, in a petri dish, essentially. So typically, a clinical trial will be that a drug is tested in the laboratory, then tested in animals, typically small animals like mice, can move to larger animals like dogs. In our case, our animal testing has primarily been in mice before that drug testing moves into humans. We've been involved in several clinical trials in the past. Two of them have resulted in drugs that are one used now relatively as a relatively common standard of care, if you will, as an alternate therapy. It's a drug known as rituximab. And it is used as an alternate therapy when children and adults are not particularly responsive to the more traditional therapies that that are used to manage long-term juvenile myositis. A second drug that was really completed a clinical trial a couple of years ago at our GW Center of Excellence is a drug called abatacept. It is used at this point relatively sparingly in JM, but we're on an education program to really familiarize pediatric rheumatologists and our clinical care network members around the country about the availability and the usefulness of this drug for certain JM kids. The importance of having more drug therapies and variable drug therapies for children is, as we all know, children with JM typically respond differently. The disease itself is not the same in all children, and not all children respond well or effectively to the more traditional initial treatments of steroids and methotrexate. So we're continuing to focus on this idea of moving more drugs through early experimentation and into human clinical trials. Two that we're very optimistic about. One which is relatively new to our world is a drug called deucravacitinib. It's a drug that was recently approved for psoriatic arthritis. It is not approved for any other disease at this particular point. But we're about to launch, and towards the end of this year, enroll patients in a clinical trial through NIH and Johns Hopkins University for adults with JM for this particular drug. And then once the adults go through the clinical trial, we will petition the FDA to enroll adolescents and children in a second phase of the clinical trial. We believe this drug will be quite effective, as it's a newer generation JAK inhibitor. These JAK inhibitors are drugs that basically shut down the process that through which muscle weakness and skin eruptions happen in juvenile myositis. There's a similar drug that has been through clinical trials, but not significant clinical trials, called baricitinib. We're hopeful that drug may come back in the future for clinical trials as well. And then finally, for many years, we have been pursuing a drug called vamorolone, which is an alternative steroid. It's an alternative to prednisone. It's a steroid with fewer side effects. It was approved about a year and a half ago for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And we have been working closely with the company that now has the U.S. rights to the distribution of this drug, hoping that they will sponsor a clinical trial in JM. Without going into a great amount of detail, they've hired a clinical trial organization to assess the viability of the financial viability, the business case, if you will, for this drug in JM. And have every reason to believe at this point that we're pretty close to a decision that this company will be moving forward. The company is known as Catalyst Pharmaceuticals, and our role in all of these clinical trials is either to fund the researchers and the physicians that are conducting those trials, to fund the facilities or the institutions, if you will, where the trials are being conducted, and to educate and provide the patients that are necessary for these trials to succeed. The last one I want to mention is one that I think we should all be pretty excited about. It's a clinical trial in the therapy known as CAR T therapy. We'll be having a lot of information, and in fact, some of the leading CAR T experts in the world attending our family conference coming up in June. If you're not attending that conference, I hope you will. It will be an extraordinary conference with some of the leading physicians in CAR T and other clinical trials that are taking place that are being funded and supported by CureJM. Basically, CAR T is a therapy that modifies the T cells in a child or an adult with myositis or a related autoimmune disease. But in our case, we're talking about juvenile myositis. It modifies those T cells to effectively attack the B cells in the body that are a causal factor of juvenile myositis. There have been some 30 patients in autoimmune disease, mostly lupus disease, but there have been a handful, 5 or 6 myositis patients and 2 or 3 juvenile myositis patients that we have been following, where this therapy has literally halted the disease in its tracks. For the patients who first went through these clinical trials, these patients were lupus patients. It's now been 3.5 years that the first patients that went through this CAR T therapy remain in remission. And we've seen the same thing with the juvenile myositis patients, extraordinary improvement in skin scores, in muscle strength. Children who were essentially confined to a hospital bed for extended periods of time are out running now, playing soccer, doing the kinds of things that we'd like to see all children doing as a result of the outcomes of this CAR T therapy. We're working with the company Cabaletta Bio that has a CAR T therapy platform. And they'll soon be enrolling patients, both adult and adolescent patients at various sites around the country. So stay tuned for more information as those sites come online. There's a couple of others that we're also pursuing a therapy similar to CAR T therapy called CAR NK therapy. Really does the same thing in terms of restoring the efficacy, if you will, of T cells so they can do their job in a patient's body. And there'll also be information and presentations on that particular therapy at our family conference as well. So those are on the science side of things, kind of the priorities that we're very much looking at in terms of fulfilling our mission of finding better treatments and, knock on wood, keep your fingers crossed, finding a cure as well for this disease. The medical community itself, when they're looking at therapies like CAR T therapy, for example, they're the ones who are calling this therapy potentially curative. So I think when the myositis doctors who have been, taking care of our children for, years and years and years, look at this therapy with the kind of optimism that it truly could potentially bring to the myositis community a cure, I think that's something for us to get very excited about and for us as an organization to get behind to assure that we're doing everything we can to assure that these clinical trials are successfully completed. And when I say successfully completed, I'm really meaning here that we have high quality clinicians who are conducting this clinical trial under the strictest standards that ultimately will need to be accepted by the FDA. And that we have adequate patient enrollment to ensure that the size of the clinical trial gives us enough data to determine whether the therapy is truly viable, if you will, in the majority of patients who go through the trial, so the therapy can ultimately be approved by the FDA, and then once approved by the FDA, can be available to myositis families across the country. That's really where our focus is on the research side of things. A new area where we're also beginning to focus more and more of our organizational attention. I say new area because CureJM has not traditionally thought of itself as an advocacy organization. We advocate obviously for high quality treatments, and advocate for the kinds of things that we can do in terms of training physicians to be qualified, competent JM physicians. Something that that we didn't have in this country 20 years ago, that we now have. Really, quite a network in the clinical care network that Shannon's going to be speaking about in a little bit. So that kind of medical advocacy has certainly been something that's been a major objective of ours. Where we haven't been as active, and now feel that we very much need to be active, is in protecting what I think of as the public-private partnership between organizations like CureJM, and most specifically the National Institutes of Health, or the NIH. So the NIH has long been a partner of CureJM. And when I say been a partner, it's been one where we have actually funded important juvenile myositis research that's taken place at NIH. So what we see happening now in government, with what you can really think of as wholesale cuts to the research community, and specifically to NIH, and most specifically to the rare disease community, and finally trickling all the way down to the JM community. Is we're basically seeing an assault on a partnership that has been a medical research partnership that has been the most effective in the world. There is no question that the United States has been a disease research leader, and has developed in partnership with major research universities, and in our case with major children's research hospitals. Developed better treatments, been able to save many lives, and I think most importantly, through these partnerships, where that we have actually, in our case, funded at NIH, developed better therapies and better drugs, such as the ones that I was just talking about, including vamorolone, which is an important outcome of a partnership with NIH. Including not in autoimmune diseases, but in cancer diseases, the early development of CAR T therapies. So that leadership from the NIH for organizations like ours is literally irreplaceable. There's I think we all know that the leading clinician in JM care and research in the world is an employee of NIH. And she is at some risk of having her entire department eliminated. Another clinician at NIH who conducted one of the clinical trials that we also funded, in a drug called baricitinib, very successful trial, I might add, had her position eliminated, then restored, then eliminated, and then restored again for a 6-month period of time. So this kind of whipsawing of NIH employees, as well as a reduction of grant funding to major research institutions, and children's research hospitals, will have a real devastating effect on all rare diseases, and no doubt on JM specifically, if we're not able to do everything we can to, quite frankly, bring, I think, some common sense to the folks who are making these decisions, really in very much of a whipsaw, willy-nilly kind of way. So that's one thing that we started doing as an important advocacy component of this organization when many of you signed on to our letter to the incoming and brand new Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This particular letter was, I think, a very thoughtful letter that really urged him to take a careful look at the value that American taxpayers get in rare disease research generally, and in juvenile myositis specifically, when we're an organization that's actually funding government research, not the other way around. What we're trying to impress on the policymakers in Washington is that it's really all of you. It's our JM families for the last 23 years who have invested more than $27 million in research in a very rare disease, juvenile myositis. The government hasn't invested that kind of money. The government hasn't created the 20 or 25 research institutions that we fund and the researchers who are focusing their time and attention on juvenile myositis research. All of you have done that and made that happen through this particular organization. And that's an important message to get out there. So not only do the NIH decision makers understand that, but that the general public understands that as well. That's more important than ever for us to be able to maintain the integrity of a system, of a public-private partnership system that really works and works well. There's no question that the physicians at NIH have saved over the years many lives, JM lives. These are the very physicians that volunteer their time at our Center of Excellence at GW Institution, at the GW Center of Excellence. And we need to do everything we can to preserve that system and again, not allow arbitrary decisions to literally create havoc and destruction on a research community that has created such progress over the past 23 years. So stay tuned for more on that. We're in the process. More than 2,000 of you signed on to this letter. I'm very proud of that accomplishment. I don't think any other rare disease organization has accomplished that. We've been able to get a bit of publicity around it, but our real objective here is, again, as I was saying, to bring some common sense to the decision making, to assure that at least those programs where taxpayers get an extraordinary value for the amount of money that literally goes into rare disease research at NIH, that system gets preserved. So thank you for signing on to that letter, and you'll be hearing more from us in the next couple of weeks about our next step in terms of how we'll be doing everything we can to draw attention to the decision makers to preserve this system. Shannon, over to you.
Thank you, Jim. What a great update and so much progress. So Jim gave a great update on, like he said, the important pillar of our program, our research program. I'm here to tell you a little bit more about our chapters, clinical care network, and how our partnerships are really advancing all of that work that Jim talked about. So first, our chapters. Our chapters span the US. We have 20 chapters. I know James showed you a map earlier. There's chapters near almost everybody on this call. And in fact, we have 2 chapter chairs on this call, Sue Carpenter and Justin Cook in Kansas City, and Veronica Douglas in the Pacific Northwest. So we're very grateful for all of their work leading those chapters. So what is a Cure JM chapter? This is a local community group where we come together as families to educate, to support, and to come together stronger, because nobody has to face this alone. We're all in this together, and having that community can mean so much for not only the patients, but also for the extended family. So the first partnership that I want everyone to walk away remembering is chapters. Your chapter in your community is the best way to get involved with Cure JM. But we have so many other partnerships that are really crucial to advancing our work. So our second really important partnership is with our industry partners. These are the pharmaceutical companies that are working so hard every day to bring new and better treatments to each of our children. We're so grateful for all of those partnerships. Octa Pharma, Cabaletta Bio, Century Therapeutics, IV Solutions, the list goes on. We have so many wonderful partners, and you'll be able to meet many of them at your upcoming chapter events. So we've got our chapters, our industry partners, and I want to talk about the most important partnership that you all are so familiar with, our clinicians. Our clinicians from Cincinnati Children's to Seattle Children's to Rady Children's in San Diego are really the backbone of providing the best care to all of our families. So we have a couple of different programs, but I'll just touch on two of those today. So first, we have a clinician education program. Can anybody guess how many years it typically takes for a new treatment to make its way into the clinic? So Jim's talking about making all of these new treatments, but how long does it actually take to get to your children? On average, it takes about 20 years. Yeah, Veronica knew, right? 20 years. And that's just not something that anyone on this call has time for, right? So under James Teely's extraordinary leadership, we have done an incredible job of educating clinicians on the newest and best treatments. So we have these summits 4 times a year, where the doctors who are experts in different ways of either treating JDM or new treatments or the best in clinical practice come on Zoom and train hundreds of clinicians worldwide on how to provide the best care for JM children. So this is something that we've done to try to shorten the amount of time to get new information out into the hands of the clinicians that are treating your children. And the second thing, again, under the extraordinary leadership of James Teely, is the Cure JM Clinical Care Network. So this is a network of 58 leading clinicians across the country. Cincinnati Children's, I know we've got Dr. O'Connor on with us tonight, all the way down to Tampa, up to Canada, United Kingdom, San Diego, all across the country. We've got 58 JM specialists who provide expertise and care to your children as close to home as possible. This is an extraordinary achievement because not long ago, maybe just a couple decades ago, there were maybe a handful of JM specialists. This was a rare disease that was often misunderstood and misdiagnosed. We've taken great strides forward to get real care into your communities so that you don't have to travel to get your kids the best care. But admittedly, we still have pockets of the country where people are having to travel more, and we're working to expand as quickly as funding allows to make sure our network covers all of your children. So reach out to James if you have any questions, or visit the Cure JM Clinical Care Network on our website. So we talked about our chapters, our industry partners, our clinician partners, and our Cure JM Clinical Care Network. And the fourth part of making this partnership possible is really each of you. So our families. Our families are the backbone of all of this progress. Like Jim mentioned several times, $27 million raised has been raised $10 at a time, $5 at a time by each of our families. So participation is really the key that keeps this progress moving forward. We're going to hear a little bit from Zack and Nicole about how each of you can get involved, but I would love to extend the invitation to anyone who wants to get involved. Please raise your hand, reply to James, drop your name in the chat. We would love to have you involved in your chapters, in our walks, and I'm very pleased to have the co-chair of one of our biggest fundraisers, the Holiday Challenge, here with us tonight, Leah Kanye. So there are many ways for you to get involved. One thing I would say is reach out, because no matter where you're at in your JDM journey, we have a group for you. So we have our National Leadership Council and chapters for our parents. We have our Grandparent Alliance for any grandparents that might want to get involved, and our Young Adult Advocates Council for all of our patients age 17 to 30 who want to make a difference. And when I talk about making a difference, let me just highlight Zack Harrison. So we're going to hand it over to Zack. Zack has the unique distinction of being the only dad to have started 2 Cure JM chapters. So as James mentioned, he started the Ohio chapter and then was transferred for work, and now has started an Orange County chapter of Cure JM. So we're very grateful to Zack. He's an incredible part of our community, serving on the board of directors and as a walk chair. So I'll let you take it from here, Zack, to tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Great update. So, little background on how I wound up in this position on the board and leading a chapter in Southern California. It really all started, most importantly, with our own JM warrior, Sydney, who was she's 13 now, and she was diagnosed when she was 3 years old. And it was kind of a long, arduous process of a diagnosis, which took about 3 months to get to a formal diagnosis. And even since then, that diagnosis time continues to go down due to the awesome work of our Cure JM community and our medical partners. So it really started there. And once the dust settled and the fog cleared of all the crazy, scary stuff that we went through with that, it was really about how do we help, how do we make a difference here? And Cure JM popped up, and that was the main resource that we started diving into to learn more about the disease, connect with folks, since it's so rare and it's hard to find people that even know what you're talking about when you say juvenile myositis. So we really started diving in there, and one thing led to another, and we joined a fundraiser and would just raise a couple funds here and there. I was a member of the Lions Club, and they would help us raise money for Cure JM. And then eventually it got to a point where it made sense to start a chapter. And and you mentioned it, Shannon, it's the networking. I see network on there, and that's what it's really all about. That's why getting people involved. You never know what skill set they're going to have, or what they're going to want to bring to the table to help advance our cause, and how important something where they might not even have a kid involved, they just are a friend of the family, but this really resonated with them. And I have multiple examples of that over my time with Cure JM, where people just helped out with something and they stuck around. And the Ohio chapter is similar to that now, where it led to a chapter, which led to walks, and then a golf, and then someone rose their hand and said, we're going to do a Cure JM Swing for a Cure golf outing. I've ran golf outings before. I want to do this. I think we can make a little bit of money. With that little bit of money turned into, $20, $30, $40,000 that we can raise at times in those things. So, and that person continues to this day. And ever since I've moved to California, they continue to run that. I fly back once a year to attend it, but that person continues to plan that thing with, a couple hundred folks and raising that money. And it's just, it kind of grew legs. So I don't do much when it comes to raising any funds or any kind of tasks when it comes to that, but it's really getting folks involved, and people want to help. So I think that's the most important piece of it. And now coming out here, I want to start creating that network again. And we have an awesome support staff with Cure JM that helps us get that thing going. And the more people that get involved, they just get really bought in. sometimes it's not even about JM itself. We have a cool community with a lot of great people in it, and you create friendships, and people just stick around. It's a fun charity to be a part of, and people stick around and they want to help. So that's since led to a couple successful walks here in Southern California. But that's really how we got to the point where I'm at, and doing what I can with the little extra time that I do have when I'm not flying all over God's creation. And it's really about getting people involved, and figuring out what it is that they can contribute, if they what makes them happy. And there's no job too small. You know, everybody's skill set's different, and everybody has a different amount of time that they can spend on charities or extracurriculars. So I would just say, you know, try to get as many people involved as you can with the organization. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, that's fine. But that's how we've continued to grow this, what used to be a small little grassroots charity, to, you know, what Jim mentioned, that contributing over $23 million to research over those years. So pretty cool stuff, great community, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole Ryba. She's our chapter and walk manager, and she helps keep us all in line when it comes to keeping our walks moving forward and staying organized.
Thanks, Zach. So I'm just going to touch a little bit upon what our Walk Strong program is. I see many of you on here that I have had the opportunity to work with, you know, on the walk. Some I haven't crossed paths with yet, so hopefully we will do so in the future. But the Walk Strong is our signature fundraising event. If you guys have looked at our curejm.org/walks website, it does list all of our walks for the upcoming year. Zach is very modest. He just had the SoCal walk and was a key leader in that event, raising over $41,000. So it was a really great event to kick us off for the year. And, you know, in addition to raising the funds for research, as has been mentioned, you know, it's the opportunity to bring our families together. And that's ultimately what we want to do. The event itself, if you've had the opportunity to attend, and what everyone continues to share after, is that it's more than just a walk. You know, we gather together to support one another. We're building our community. We're sharing stories. You know, we're creating those connections that sometimes aren't always the easiest to find due to the fact that it is a rare disease. And to Zach's point, people don't even know how to pronounce it, let alone spell it half the time. So the opportunity to meet with one another and connect with one another. And the day includes more than just a walk. You know, there's games, there's entertainment, there's an opportunity for us to recognize our teams, to recognize our clinicians, and to recognize, you know, any sponsors that we have that attend that day, to really thank people and make sure that our kids are feeling supported, you know, in this journey that they're on. So if you're wondering, you know, how to get involved, or things that you can do, I just kind of want to give you a couple of tips and steps and how we can kind of help you along the way. Just to echo what's been said all along, you know, the research and the funds that are being raised are now more important than ever. So if you want to become a part of a walk team, the first step would be to sign up and register. So as I mentioned, on curejm.org/walks, you can find your local walk. What's listed on there is the date where it's taking place, and also there's several chapter and walk managers that are affiliated with each walk. So if you just click our name, you can shoot us an email and let us know that you're interested in participating. Whether that's forming a team, whether that's joining our planning committee, you know, we'd be happy to have you, because like Zach said, everyone plays a role. We're all part of the puzzle here. And we are happy to add as many people as we can to really build and make it a great event. Next, when you sign up, you want to set a fundraising goal. So what do you think would be appropriate for your team? What can you do? The sky is the limit. You can start low, you can go high, whatever you feel where you'd be most effective. And that goal can continually change. You know, something else to keep in mind, we have a very generous family, the Leeds family, that has provided a match. So if you raise 500, your first 500, we match it on your page, which also is very exciting. Part of the importance of creating your page is really personalizing it. So that would be a third thing that we want to do. So You can share your story, tell why you're walking, why you're getting involved. The more information that you put out there to share with someone when you're asking them to support you, whether it be through a donation or joining your team, the more likely someone will want to partner with you because they'll understand really how important this is and why you're doing it. We can personalize your page with a story. We can update your picture. Those are things you can all share and send to me or whoever is in charge of the walk, and we can help get you started. Once you have all that and you're ready to share, we'll provide you with the language to send out to people to join your team. You know, you want to reach out to as many people as possible. Majority of people, when asked to do something, will do so. So if you're curious on whether or not they'll donate, you know, the only thing you can do is ask. The worst that they could ever say is no. And most people, when asked to do something, will do just simply because you asked them to do it. The other thing is that's important, you know, there's so many people that are on social media today. So you want to take advantage of that and you know, let people know why you're participating. Put it in your story, share it on Facebook, share it through text, you know, and continually update people on the journey that you're on and on, you know, your progress for the event. You know, there's a lot of times that we put things out that we might need for a walk, and people that may not have initially signed up now participate with us and want to support it. So you just never really know what's out there, and you all can make such a significant impact collectively as a whole, that we would love to have your participation, you know, in what we're doing. I honestly can talk extensively about this, but I want to make sure we have time for Q&A too. So I'm going to kick it back to James. But I do thank all of you who have participated thus far with us. And just one thing that I think that has been really important for me to hear back from people who have participated was that the experience for them, for many of them, has been priceless in the sense that their kids were able to connect with others that they hadn't been able to do so before. And it just has been a really meaningful experience and a continuation of really, we always say we're a family of families, and that's ultimately what we are and what we want people to feel like when they leave the walk. So your participation in that, you know, helps make those things possible and continues with, you know, our fight in the fight for a cure. So thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. We are excited to get Walk Strong season cranked up around here. And our Nashville Walk Strong event is not until October, but the team has started meeting and preparing and dreaming for what that event could look like. This does feel like a critical inflection point in the history of the organization, and every little bit of your participation in these fundraising events, even your encouragement through these town halls, does make a big difference to this organization in our search for fight for better treatment and a cure for juvenile myositis. Coming up next month in our town hall, we have Rhonda Thorington as our guest. There are some marked mental health challenges that we all face as caregivers of patients facing this disease. And Rhonda has a great toolkit for resilient parenting that is on offer Thursday, the 24th of April. This will be another evening town hall. You can find registration for that event in the link just below this video. Also know that coming up in June, again, is our National Family Conference. We have 250 people registered so far for this event. Have you registered yet? You can do so at curejm.org/conference. Space is running low these days, so don't delay. If you're willing to and able to join us in Chicago, I can guarantee it will be a momentous event. Thanks again to all of our sponsors for making this town hall possible and so much of the work of the Cure JM Foundation.